All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to dissect a real-world cyber espionage campaign, one that weaponized a tool that's probably on your machine right now, 7-Zip. But this is about so much more than a single bug. We're going to uncover how this one exploit opens a door to a much bigger, more insidious threat, one that makes you question if you can even trust the code you're looking at with your own eyes. So it all kicks off right here. Threat hunters over at Trend Micro's zero-day initiative are doing their thing, and they spot something in the wild. A zero-day, a vulnerability that has no patch yet, being actively used. This wasn't some lab experiment. This was live, targeting specific entities in a very real-world conflict. Okay, so let's start peeling back the layers. Before we get into all the technical nuts and bolts of how this worked, we need to understand the strategy, the who, the what, and the why. Because as you can see, this was no random attack. This was a calculated cyber espionage campaign. And here's the threat intel summary. It lays it all out pretty clearly. The targets? High-value Ukrainian government and civilian organizations. The attackers are linked to Russian cybercrime groups, and they're using SmokeLoader, a particularly nasty piece of malware that acts as a door opener for other payloads. And the delivery method was classic spear phishing. It all points to one clear motive: espionage. Now we're getting to the really juicy part, the core technical exploit. What the attackers found wasn't just some run-of-the-mill bug. Nope. They found a way to slice right through a fundamental piece of Windows security, a feature that defenders like us rely on every single day. So, to really get why this exploit is so clever, you have to understand the defense it's breaking. The mark of the web, or MOW. You know it even if you don't know the name. It's that little flag Windows sticks on everything you download from the internet. It's the reason you get that pop-up that says, "Hey, are you sure you want to run this?" It tells the OS to be suspicious and to run extra checks, like firing up Defender Smart Screen. It's a really critical first line of defense. And this vulnerability, CVE 2024-0411, basically punches a giant hole right through that defense. It lets an attacker build a special 7-zip file where the malicious payload inside never gets the mark of the web flag. Think about that. To Windows, that malicious file looks like something you created yourself, a trusted local file, not a dangerous thing you just pulled down from the web. And this is how they pulled it off. It's actually brilliantly simple. The attacker just double archives the payload. It's like a Russian nesting doll. The outer archive, the one you download, gets the mark of the web flag, just like it's supposed to. But, and this is the key, the vulnerable version of 7-zip fails to pass that flag down to the stuff inside the inner archive. So when the user extracts everything, the malicious file just pops out squeaky clean with zero security warnings. Smart Screen is completely bypassed. But hold on, the attack isn't over. A technical bypass is great, but you still need the user to actually run the malicious file. So now we get to the next layer, where the attackers mix that clever technical trick with some old-school social engineering. Right, this is the million-dollar question for any phishing campaign. The system warnings from Mark of the Web are gone, so there are no pop-ups. But how do you get a person to double-click on something that should still look, well, a little suspicious? They used a very effective and classic method, a homoglyph attack. This whole technique is built on a simple fact. A lot of characters in different alphabets, like the Latin alphabet we use and the Cyrillic alphabet, look exactly the same to our eyes. But to a computer, they are completely different beasts. Just take a look at this. On the left, you've got your standard .doc file suffix with a regular Latin C. On the right, it looks identical, but that C is actually a Cyrillic C. To a user, especially one in Ukraine who sees Cyrillic characters all the time, this is totally invisible. They see a Word document. But the operating system, it sees an executable file with a tricky name. You combine that with the MoTW bypass, and you have a devastating 1-2 punch. Okay, so this homoglyph attack is a perfect example of trickery at the visual level. But what if you could take that same idea, something looking safe to a human but being malicious to a computer, and apply it not just to a file name but to the actual source code of our software? Well, that's where this story gets a lot bigger and, frankly, a lot scarier. Researchers at Cambridge gave this a name, Trojan source. The core concept is just mind-bending. You can use weirdnesses in text encoding, specifically with Unicode, to create a massive gap between what a developer sees on their screen and what the compiler actually turns into a program. And this is not some small niche problem. Look at this list. It affects pretty much every major programming language we use. An attacker can use invisible characters to literally reorder how code executes. Imagine a security check in the code that looks totally fine during a peer review, but in reality, the compiler is told to just skip it. This essentially turns our entire software supply chain into a minefield because it undermines the very code reviews we rely on for security. So that's a lot to take in. With this pretty complex threat staring us in the face, what can we actually do to defend our networks and our organizations? Let's talk about the concrete, actionable steps. First things first, let's look at the timeline. The exploit was found in the wild late September. A week later, it's disclosed responsibly. But the patch doesn't come out until the end of November. That 2-month gap right there, that's the window of exposure. That's when every organization using a vulnerable version of 7-zip was a sitting duck. It just goes to show you how critical it is to patch and patch fast. So defending against this really comes down to a classic defense in-depth strategy. Number 1, and this is non-negotiable, patch the vulnerability. Get 7-zip updated now. Number 2, you have to harden the delivery vector itself. Use advanced email security to block these phishing attempts before they ever reach an inbox. And number 3, train the human layer. Teach your people to spot these subtle tricks so they can be your final and maybe your strongest line of defense. And this really brings us to the big, final takeaway. This 7-zip exploit, it's more than just one bug in one program. It's a perfect, small-scale example of a much deeper problem. It proves that deception can be woven right into the digital fabric of our world, from a simple file name all the way down to the source code itself. And it forces us as security professionals to ask a really uncomfortable question. If our own eyes can deceive us at the code level, are our fundamental security review processes broken? And what are we going to do about it?